They said the river behind Konanji never forgets. But that night, when the water showed the face of a dead boy smiling back at me, I knew something buried long ago had started to breathe again. The river behind Konanji Secondary was older than any of us. It crawled like a snake at the edge of the forest, silent during the day but alive at night. We used to fetch water there, play there, even fight there, but we never stayed too long after sunset. The elders said the river could remember faces. I used to laugh at that. I don't laugh anymore. It began on a quiet Monday. The dry wind carried dust across the classrooms, and the afternoon sun made everything shimmer. I went down to the river to wash my hands before supper. That's when I saw it, the reflection. Not mine. Not anyone living. It was Peter Muchua, the boy who drowned 3 years before. His face was calm, floating on the surface, eyes wide open like he was still waiting for help. I blinked, splashed the water, but the image didn't go. Only when I whispered his name did the reflection fade, replaced by ripples that seemed to whisper back. Word spread fast. By morning, everyone at Konanji had heard that the river was showing faces. Some said it was witchcraft. Others said it was grief playing tricks. But then, another student saw something too. This time it was a girl, Naomi. She swore she saw her cousin, who died in a fire years ago, smiling from beneath the surface. That's when Daniel arrived. A new student from Mwingi, quiet and serious, with a scar across his left cheek. He didn't talk much, but when he heard about the river, he said something strange. It doesn't show faces for no reason, he told us. It shows those we owe. None of us understood what he meant, but something in his voice made the hairs on my arm stand up. That night, the drums from the nearby hills began to echo through the trees. The same night another face appeared in the water. By the third night, the school was restless. No one went to the river alone anymore. Even the teachers avoided it. But I couldn't stop thinking about what I saw. So after prep, I sneaked out with a torch. The night was cold and quiet, too quiet. The moonlight made the water glow like glass. I knelt by the bank and whispered, "Peter." The surface trembled. Slowly, a face rose again. This time, his lips moved. The reflection spoke. "Find my book," it said. "Before they burn it again." I stumbled backward, heart pounding. The torch flickered out. Behind me, I heard footsteps. It was Daniel. He stood at the edge, watching the water too. "You heard him," Daniel said softly. "They're not done with us yet." That's when I realized Daniel wasn't surprised at all. He already knew the river's secret. The next day, I couldn't concentrate in class. My head was full of questions. What book? Who wanted to burn it? And how did Daniel know? During break, I followed him behind the dorms. He didn't resist. "You really want to know?" he asked. "Then come after L. Then come after lights out. Bring a lantern." At midnight, we crept to the old storeroom behind the science lab. Dust, cobwebs, silence. Daniel moved a cracked shelf, revealing a small metal box hidden behind it. Inside was a soaked notebook, the pages brown and wrinkled. "This belonged to Peter," Daniel said. "He wrote everything before he died." The first page had only 4 words, "The river remembers blood." I didn't understand it then. But that book was the beginning of everything that followed, the truth that would tear our village apart. We hid the notebook in our dorm, under my mattress. The next morning, before class, we opened it again. Peter had written about strange rituals near the river, teachers meeting there at night, carrying calabashes and candles. He said the river had taken sacrifices for years, and that every time a student disappeared, it wasn't an accident. It was an offering. My hands shook as I read. Daniel looked calm, too calm. "My uncle used to be one of them," he said quietly. "That's why I came here. To finish what Peter started." From that day, the reflection in the river wasn't the only thing haunting us. The truth itself began to breathe around Konanji. After reading Peter's notebook, Daniel and I started noticing things. The trees near the river weren't just moving with the wind, they were whispering. You'd stand there alone, and the leaves would rustle softly, shaping words you almost understood. One afternoon, as we returned from class, we found symbols carved into the bark of a large fig tree beside the river. 3 circles joined by a single line. The same symbol was drawn on the last page of Peter's notebook. When we showed it to Naomi, she gasped. "That's the mark of the elders," she said. "My grandfather had it on his walking stick." That night, Naomi came running to our dorm, trembling. She dreamt of her grandfather standing by the river, his eyes glowing, repeating the same words, "The river keeps the truth." It was the first time I truly believed the river was alive. The next evening, Daniel took us to the back of the school compound. Hidden behind the fence was an old hut covered in vines. "This is where they met," he said. Inside, we found burnt candles, broken gourds, and a small shrine carved from black stone. The walls were painted with ashes and red clay. In the center, there was a cracked mirror half buried in the ground. Daniel picked it up carefully. "Peter wrote about this," he said. "They used it to call the river spirit." Just as he spoke, Naomi screamed. The reflection in the mirror wasn't ours, it was a crowd of people standing by the river, their faces pale and motionless. Then, as if pulled by invisible hands, the mirror shattered in Daniel's grip. When we ran out, the air felt heavier, thicker, as though something had been released. The next morning, the headmaster called us into his office. He was calm but his eyes were cold. Air smelled like rain and secrets. And I knew the river wasn't done with us yet. After Daniel vanished, the school changed. The laughter, the noise, even the smell of food in the dining hall, it all felt heavy, as if the air itself carried grief. At night, when everything went silent, I could still hear his voice. Sometimes whispering my name, sometimes screaming from under the water. Naomi refused to talk about it, but I could tell she was breaking inside. One evening, I saw her kneeling by the river, whispering apologies. "Please forgive us," she said. I didn't understand what she meant until I noticed the bracelet on her wrist, woven from blue beads and animal hide, the same type Daniel wore. I realized then, they were related. But Naomi never told anyone. That night, as I walked back to the dorms, I heard the river calling my name too. Softly. Almost kindly. Like it remembered me from somewhere long before I was born. The next morning, Naomi came to me shaking. She had found something in the school library, a box hidden behind old newspapers. Inside were cassette tapes labeled with students' names and years. We took one labeled, Peter, 2004, and played it in the classroom. His voice came through, trembling. "If you find this, run. The river isn't water, it's memory. It remembers the sins of the people buried beneath it." Then we heard splashing, shouting, and finally silence. The tape ended abruptly. Naomi switched off the player, her eyes wet. Peter knew about the curse. He was trying to warn us. We listened to another tape labeled Headmaster. The voice was older, deeper. "We promised the river our blood. 1 child every 10 years. That's the price." I felt sick. Konyanji wasn't cursed by accident, it was bound by a deal made long ago. That night, Naomi came to my dorm quietly. Her eyes were red from crying. "Baraka," she said softly, "there's something I need to tell you before it's too late." She sat on the edge of the bed, her voice trembling. Daniel was my cousin. Our grandfather was one of the men who made the pact with the river. They offered the lives of their bloodline to protect the village from drought. I stared at her in disbelief. She nodded, tears falling. "The curse follows us. That's why he was taken. And now, it's coming for me." Outside, thunder rumbled, though the sky was clear. The sound of drums rose from the river again, faint but steady, like a heartbeat. She held my hand tightly. "If I disappear, promise you tell the truth about what happened here." I promised. But deep inside, I already knew the river never breaks its promise. 3 nights later, we heard footsteps outside our door. When I peeked through the window, I saw Daniel, wet, barefoot, his eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. Naomi ran to him, calling his name, but I pulled her back. Something about him wasn't right. His voice was soft, echoing strangely. Naomi, the river forgives us now. Come with me. She froze, trembling. The water, Baraka, you cannot run from what you inherit. The following morning, I returned to the old hut behind the school. This time, I dug beneath the cracked floor where Daniel found the mirror. I uncovered a rusted metal box. Inside was an old journal wrapped in goat skin. The pages were fragile, written in shaky handwriting. It belonged to Chief Mui, one of the village founders. He wrote, "The drought nearly killed us. We went to the river for help. The spirit asked for one offering, a child from each family that drinks from its water. We agreed." My hands trembled as I turned the last page. If the bloodline forgets its promise, the river will rise and take all. Just then, Naomi entered, pale and sweating. "The elders know you have it," she whispered. "They are coming." I hid the journal under my shirt. The outside had turned cold, too cold for a Kenyan evening. That night, thunder rolled without rain. The drums began again, faster this time, like war drums. The students woke in fear, whispering prayers. When we looked out the window, the river had overflown its banks, spreading across the football field like liquid silver. Naomi clutched my arm. "It's calling the chosen," she said. "It's coming for its due." I saw shadows walking on the water, children's shapes, familiar faces of the dead. They were singing a lullaby none of us had ever heard. The headmaster ran out, shouting, "Stay back! Stay back!" But before he could take another step, the water rose and pulled him under. Just like that, he was gone. The elders gathered near the gate, chanting louder, trying to contain it, but the river didn't stop. It was angry. It was alive. Naomi turned to me, tears streaming down. "We broke the oath," she said. "Now it wants everyone." The flood reached the dormitories. Students screamed and ran, but Naomi stood still, her eyes glowing faintly blue in the lightning's flash. "I can stop it," she said softly. "If I give myself, it will end." I grabbed her hand. "No. We'll find another way." She smiled weakly. "There's no other way, Baraka. The bloodline began it. I must finish it." Before I could stop her, she ran toward the river. The wind howled like a living thing. I chased her through the mud, screaming her name. She stepped into the water, her face calm. The river rose around her waist, then her shoulders. She looked back once and whispered, "Tell them, it's over." Then the water swallowed her whole. The drum stopped instantly. Silence. For the first time, Konanji was quiet. No whispers. No reflections. Just the soft sound of rain beginning to fall. When dawn came, the water had receded. The air smelled clean, like a storm that had washed away years of rot. The students gathered in shock. The elders were gone. The headmaster was gone. Naomi was gone. Only I remained to remember. "Your family helped bind the river," she said. "You are the last to break the oath." I fell to my knees, trembling. How do I end it? Naomi smiled. "Tell the story. Speak it aloud, so memory no longer hides in water. Let the world remember." Then, slowly, she faded back into the rippling surface, leaving me alone beneath the moonlight. I spent the next day walking through the ruins of Konyanji. The classrooms were hollow, the blackboards covered in dust. But on one wall, I found the same symbol, 3 circles joined by a line, carved deep into the concrete. I took a piece of charcoal and drew over it, this time adding one more circle in the center. "For Naomi," I whispered. Then I walked to the riverbank, carrying Peter's old notebook, the one I had kept hidden all these years. I tore its pages one by one and threw them into the water. The river swallowed them gently, glowing brighter with each page. As the last page sank, the air became still. For the first time in decades, I felt peace. The drums faded into silence, and the water reflected only the moon, no faces, no shadows. I knew then that Konanji's story had finally been told. The curse had ended with truth. Now, I am an old man sitting by the same river, my walking stick planted in the soil. Children pass by sometimes, laughing, throwing stones into the water. None of them know what sleeps beneath, what memories lie there. I watch the ripples form and disappear, and I smile. The river is quiet now, but sometimes, when the wind blows from the hills, I hear faint laughter. Naomi's laughter. I tell the story to anyone who will listen. Some think it's just an old man's tale. Others listen with fear in their eyes. But I always end the same way. The river remembers. It does not forget lies, or blood, or silence. But when truth is spoken, even spirits can rest. As the sun sets behind the hills, the river glows softly in gold. My reflection ripples, then steadies. For the first time, I see peace in it. And I whisper, "Sleep well, Konyanji. Your drums can rest now."